And then we will get started. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today for this webinar about our Master of Legal Studies in Cybersecurity and Data Privacy at Cleveland Marshall College of Law at Cleveland State University. Today we're going to focus on an inside look at the state of cyber jobs. And I am happy to have with me today Professor Brian Ray, who's the director for our Center for Cybersecurity and Privacy Protection. He also founded this program and the Center for Cybersecurity and Privacy Protection. He also teaches in this program. Brian, I'm going to toss it to you to give a little bit more of your background and then introduce our special guest, Spence.
Thanks, Julie. As Julie mentioned, I created this program and co-founded our Center for Cybersecurity and Privacy Protection. And one thing I always like to emphasize and share is I had no technical background when I first got into this field. I was a litigator for a long time at an international law firm, Jones Day. When I became an academic, I was teaching in some litigation-related courses and started paying close attention to what's called electronic discovery, which is simply discovery using electronic materials, which is almost everything, although for many, many years, lawyers and judges would insist that e-discovery was a sort of rare breed. And in any event, ended up getting more into technology. And that's one of the great things about this program, as we'll talk later, is it's designed for people like me to give you that thorough grounding in technology, even if you don't have one, and then get you in depth into the legal and business aspects. And it's for those reasons that we have talented and wonderful people like Spence, who, although like me, started out not as a technologist, went deep into that. And Spence really has been a partner helping us to create this program. He created the recreated the cybersecurity one course, developed it and added some technical depth. And we'll talk more about that later in the program. And then also just recently finished and will teach to our first cohort that's going to finish up this summer, our cybersecurity capstone. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. But with that, as you heard in the intro, if you were on early, Spence has had a recent career shift. He was with a cybersecurity company called Lunarline for many years. Lunarline was acquired by Motorola. And after helping with that transition, Spence is now back in the security consulting business with 38 North. And so Spence, I'll let you tell a little bit about yourself before we jump into the topic for today.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about our program. We've built this, fantastic curriculum, like Brian mentioned. So the cybersecurity field is just rife with opportunity. I mean, there are just career opportunities and job opportunities everywhere. However, those career opportunities are getting a little bit more technical, right? They're expecting us to have a little bit more technical grounding in addition to the sort of soft skills that go along with security. And the great news for every attendee on the call today, even if you can barely turn on a computer, you have absolutely no technical background whatsoever, is that those skills are very teachable. It's not, technology like, spending 24 hours a day coding stuff like you see in the movies. It's very it's very operationally focused. They're, almost like changing the brakes in your car. Kind of anybody can learn to do it, right? You can get that foundation. And once you have that foundation, the career opportunities are endless, which is sort of what I discovered. So I started, just out of college, kind of floundering around looking for something to do. I randomly wound up in venture capital. And so I was working at a venture capital consulting company, just doing research, documentation stuff. And, then the Great Recession hit. And so obviously, venture capital wasn't really an option anymore. And it's not really what I wanted to do anyway. But I had studied these companies, cybersecurity companies, as a venture capitalist. And so long story short, I wound up working for a small business startup in cybersecurity. And initially in sales and marketing, but then got into delivery and actually working on projects. And I learned how to go from, I was one of those people that could barely turn on a computer, and I learned to build my own technical foundation that enabled the career success I have now, which those cybersecurity startups grew really fast. We sold a couple of them, started another one, sold that, and then now I'm with a group of friends at 38 North Security, which is we're really focused on high-end cloud security consulting and operations. So it's a small group of really, really skilled cloud technologists. And so my role in this program is to kind of look back and take all those technical lessons I learned and condense that and help you get up that learning curve so that you can access, just extremely high paying and really rewarding careers in cybersecurity, which we'll talk about throughout this presentation. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you to both Brian and Spence, and I know you're excited to hear more from them later in the presentation. So I just wanted to briefly go over the agenda and what we'll do here today. So like I said, you will hear more from Brian and Spence, and we'll talk about the state of cybersecurity jobs and of course, how this program will help you achieve those goals. We will have a question and answer session after Brian and Spence's presentation, but I do want to mention, I know both Brian and Spence like to have a dialogue, so if you have a question as they're speaking, please go ahead and chat it either in the chat or the question and answer, and we'll be sure to answer that right then and there. If time permits, we'll go over the program and any next steps if you're interested in applying. So without further ado, I'm going to toss it back over to Brian and Spence to talk to you about the state of cybersecurity and the job market.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. And as Julie mentioned, please feel free to drop any questions in the chat. We won't take the full hour if we don't need to. We're just going to give you a quick overview of the state of the job market and then how our program maps to it. But we're really here to answer your questions about the program. Whether you have them now or later, we're always happy to talk with you. And so what we've got here is a representation of just a little bit of the complexity and the interaction between law and cybersecurity. So one of the questions you might be asking yourself is, well, why would I go into a cybersecurity and privacy program at a law school? And the short answer is because although cybersecurity per se is a primarily and at its core a technical discipline, those technical requirements are driven to a very large extent by the legal environment in which they sit. And so the legal environment, of course, is designed to react to the real world and the problems that are happening on the technology side, but it's also a complex arena in which different industries operate. Especially in the United States, different industries operate under different sets of rules and requirements, primarily based on the nature of the relationship and the nature of the information that they're collecting. And so both on the cybersecurity and on the privacy side, you've got just an increasing range of complex regulatory requirements. We've got up in the left corner there, the General Data Protection Regulation, which is the European framework that's really been a model for the world, including in the US, in particular California. In the US, for many, many years, we've had state level breach notification laws. Every state has one now. That was sort of the first formal set of cybersecurity requirements at the state level. And then, as I mentioned, different industries, Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act applies to the financial services. The PCI standards apply as sort of cross-cutting for any payment card interaction. And then, of course, we have healthcare and then general consumer privacy governed by the Federal Trade Commission. And all of these kind of overlap and come together. And the job of anybody working in this field, whether you're on the technical side, whether you're in compliance, or whether you're in business and assessing risk, is to have some understanding of this array of requirements and how to translate what the legal requirements are, which can often be very, very technical and abstruse, into operational issues. And that's really where our strength lies. We focus on getting you a 360-degree view, technical, legal, and business, and then going in depth into the legal frameworks in various ways, alongside of getting more technical depth towards the end. And so that's when you're thinking about a career in this field, regardless really of where you go, whether you're on the technical side or in compliance, having that thorough understanding of the legal dimensions is really, really important throughout your career, being able to understand new requirements as they come along, how they fit in with existing ones, and how to, again, translate them into operational practice. And that's really the strength of our program. Let's jump to the next slide, Julie. And as I mentioned, we're not just law. We also give you that grounding in the technical side and get you up to speed regardless of where you're starting in terms of technical background. And that's where Spence really has been our pro there, although we have a number of other folks that have participated in advising on this. And so I'll turn it over to Spence and let him talk about his baby, Cybersecurity 1, and then also a little bit about the technical capstone that he just finished.
Yeah, so Cybersecurity 1 is a really exciting course. I haven't, everybody kind of goes into it a little bit nervous because it's there's a heavy technical component. We are, throughout Cyber 1, in addition to getting a foundational understanding of some of those key concepts that Brian touched on in the previous slide, we get hands-on. So we start scanning networks, we run vulnerability scans, I teach you how to break into an encrypted PDF, and we start looking at real vulnerabilities. We discovered stolen credentials online, and we get to do all of this on a live network because CSU graciously opens up their network for target practice. And so it's a really fun course. And the goal, again, is to provide you with the foundational, legal and non-technical concepts to kind of understand security at a more granular level like you get into with Cybersecurity 2, but also get your feet wet with the technical stuff so that you can really build confidence. And I think, again, a lot of students, it's one of those courses that a lot of students start, really nervous, but it's very hand-holdy. I mean, I get kind of down in the weeds with students and help them get through their labs because, at the end of the semester, I want everyone's confidence level to be really high and to understand that, you can go out there and play with, technical concepts at a meaningful level, understand what's going on, and apply those to real-world challenges. And so it is, I want to emphasize that confidence bit because, again, yes, it is a fairly technical class where I think there's probably not a program in the country that does what we do at the beginner level, but at the same time, it's designed to be completely doable and fun, even for the most novice technologist out there. And it really provides a strong foundation for not only obviously the rest of the program, but ultimately the technical capstone course, which is built around the certified ethical hacker certification. So it's not a prep course. It's not, it's not like you're going to come out of the technical capstone ready to sit for the certified ethical hacker examination, because that requires a lot of hands-on practice, but it follows those concepts and in a very nice, like beginner technologist framework. And the goal being that when you leave, you can walk into an organization and support these really important, legal compliance, non-technical security functions, but have the grounding you need to sit at the table with technologists and be totally confident in that world. And maybe if you decide that you really love the technical aspects, to build that side of yourself. And either way, that grounding opens, just extremely lucrative and rewarding careers in cybersecurity, having both those skill sets.
Yeah, and so that's a great explanation. And then just turning before we get to the program, just to close the loop, when you think about career Spence and think about your own career arc, I just want to talk a little bit about how that combination works. And so, for example, one of the things I always emphasize with this program is we're not going to prepare you to take on an entry-level technical cybersecurity role in the way that a SANS or CompTIA certificate might. But what's the benefit of going through our program as opposed to maybe on top of doing one of those things if you decide, you know what, I really want to be on the technical side?
Sure, I can give you a very concrete example. So let's say you leave our program and you take a job at a major financial services organization, right? You might be handed responsibility for it's a good kind of mid-level job, new to security, but have some work experience. You'd be handed responsibility for the development, operations, maintenance, and continued improvement for a big system that handles online banking, right? Even if it's just a component of that. And so you'd have responsibility for the security elements. And so, this is a well-regulated space, it's financial services. And so, you'd have to deal with a bunch of different laws. And this is increasingly common in other industries. So like even if you go into utilities, or you go into even cloud services, or you go out to the West Coast and work for a small software startup, all of these different organizations are getting increasing regulatory pressure, right? So your job number one is to sort that out. However, while continuing to improve that service and that system that you're responsible for. So you'd be working with developers in the morning to make sure they're on track, building the new capabilities in that system. But then in the afternoon, you'd be looking at the regulatory compliance implications, for those capabilities. And every single one of those is getting more and more technical. So it's not that you don't need to know how to go in and engineer a cloud service, but you have to understand the implications of what's happening in the system and be able to work with the teams that are responsible for that. I mean, that's option number one. Another option is you could go in as just, as a mid-level leader, again, new to cybersecurity. So it's not like you're going to become chief information security officer tomorrow, but you might run a security team, right? So you'd have security operations folks on one hand, the folks that stay up around the clock watching, screens, making sure network stays safe. You'd have a compliance team on the other hand that is, making sure everything's in line documentation wise with the legal requirements. And then you have day-to-day folks doing, hands-on systems, doing operations and maintenance stuff. And so our multidisciplinary approach equips you with the skills to do those jobs right away, right? We're making sure that you come out of this program ready to perform in that role. And there is I haven't found a program nationwide that makes sure that we hit all those boxes so that you can play those roles, because that's the reality of, most mid to senior level positions in cybersecurity, is that they are multidisciplinary. They involve the technology side, they involve the legal side, they involve, day-to-day operations and maintenance and management and IT stuff. And we make sure that you have all those capabilities so that you're ready to, hit the ground running when you come out of the program. And so again, we're not saying that, you're going to graduate and immediately go, make 7 figures as a CISO for, Bank of America, right? But we set you on that path if that's where you want to go.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it. And just to give a couple real world examples, and we have several attorneys in the program. And I should mention, if you have a JD, or for that matter, if you already have a security background, we're always happy to work with you to talk through as we get to the curriculum, possibly jumping ahead and waiving some of the introductory courses. But we have several attorneys in the program. One woman who was an attorney in Puerto Rico, and now she works for a board of elections. And she's figured out that she went and thinking she might want to go in the technical side, and then has figured out she really wants to go in the compliance direction. And she's actually already sort of been volunteering and been tapped to help play a role using some of the stuff she's learning to help this board, because of course election security is a critical thing and they're low on resources. We have an experienced member of a major insurance company's security team who's with us, decided to go through the basic security courses as a refresher, and he's in it, getting the in-depth legal background and the business side. And so we get people coming from all different sides and all different levels of experience. In terms of the entry level, we have a guy who recently graduated from college, who's an IT professional, and decided he wanted to go in a security direction, saw this is valuable. So really a whole range of places you can start from. All right, Julie, let's go on to the next slide, and let's tell them a little bit about the program. And again, if you've got questions, we're not going to pause right now. We'll jump into this, but we will pause at the end. Just drop them in the chat, and we're happy to pick them up and tell you more about anything you're interested in.
Great, thank you, Brian, and thank you, Spence. And like Brian said, please at any time, drop your questions into the chat. We are happy to answer those. So I briefly just want to go over the program. So this program, the Master of Legal Studies in Cybersecurity and Data Privacy, is designed to be part-time, fully online, and we enroll students in the fall, spring, and summer. Our next term is the summer cohort, which starts on May 3rd, and we are still accepting applications. So if you're ready to get started, you can contact me after this and I can walk you through the application process. The program itself is a total of 30 credits. It's 10 courses, and that can be completed within 2 years if you do this program on a part-time basis. I do want to say that we have some students who are taking more than just 2 courses a semester. So we can be very flexible if you want to take 1 to 4 courses or however you want to do this. And then, of course, if you take more courses per semester, you'll finish the program quicker. So I'm going to move to the next slide, and we're going to talk a little bit about the curriculum. So as I mentioned, it's 10 courses, which if you do this on a part-time basis, you'll take 2 courses per semester, which spans across 5 semesters. Most of the courses are built with an asynchronous component, meaning you log on to our system, which is Canvas. You view the lectures, complete the assignments on your own time, which is really great for working individuals. However, there are some synchronous components to that, where there's some live courses where you can interact with your professors directly and the other students in your cohort. And as you can see, here are the 10 courses that are in this program. So Brian and Spence, briefly, I want to toss it back to you to see if you want to mention anything about how the program works with the asynchronous and synchronous format, and talk about any of the courses that you find most beneficial to our prospective students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead, Spence.
Oh, go ahead, Brian. Okay. Well, so the asynchronous and synchronous component is brilliant, right? So, as we're almost everybody in our program, we're working adults, right? And it's adults have, I think, one of the big differences between undergrad and being a working adult going through school is that adults have other priorities that aren't school, and that we totally understand that. And so the asynchronous component lets you pursue those requirements at your own pace, essentially. Yeah, there are deadlines. Yes, there's milestones that need to be hit, but you can work around those lectures, which we keep small. So it's not like you're going to sit down and have to sit through like a 2-hour lecture at night one night. We break these up into meaningful chunks, but at the same time you get a lot of professor interaction. So there's live classes, there's a couple throughout the semester, and at least in my classes, I encourage text messages, I encourage scheduling phone calls. We get on screen shares to work out technical issues. So it's a wonderful blend that I think just fits the life of working adults very, realistically, unlike, say a traditional master's program where, you got to be on site during the day, right? It's just great. And I was new to this, right? When I started working in this program, this sort of blended learning model is nothing I had ever done before. And I am a 100% proponent, having been teaching in this course. And so I think one thing to pay attention to, again, is that you get a really great blend of topics throughout the course when you look at it holistically. So, Cybersecurity 1 and 2, very cybersecurity principles oriented. So you learn all the basic things you need to have to think through cybersecurity holistically. Corporate compliance really dives into the compliance side, which, is really important to understand for, moving into any field of life. So if that's working for state government, working local government, working federal, working commercial, working internationally, you have to understand compliance. So it's not just private sector. Those rules impact every organization, and an increasing number of organizations as more organizations get regulated. You also get the privacy touch. And so I think a lot of folks that are new to cybersecurity don't necessarily realize that privacy and cybersecurity are very different disciplines, and sometimes are actually at odds with one another. But it's really important to understand both sides, particularly because privacy is getting increasingly important. And so when you look at this program in total, it's just an extremely well-balanced program that has all the different educational components you need to be really attractive to employers in any cybersecurity discipline, including obviously the technical component, which is a unique component of our program.
Yeah, thanks, Spence. You did a nice job covering it. And just to add a slight bit more texture, we try to kind of pair it up and get you going on each side. And so typically, although it depends on when you enter the program and the sequence going on, but you'll almost always start with Introduction to American Law or sometimes Legal Writing. Those are the 2 baseline legal courses that'll get you ready to deal with cases and deal with the sort of special language really that attaches to reading and consuming legal materials. And then Cybersecurity 1 is that core on the technical side. And you'll definitely take Cybersecurity 1 and 2 before you get to the technical capstone, which those are the 3 pieces to the in-depth technical side. And then Privacy Law and Management is a course that I helped to co-create with. We were fortunate to get a really talented guy who just retired from Nationwide as their chief privacy officer. So he built a large national company's privacy program really from the ground up. And so you get,
and is a big deal in the industry too. Yeah, he's a huge deal. locally and nationally. So it's just a blessing that we have him on
Yeah,
faculty.
and we've got really incredible talent there. And it's from an operational perspective. And so although we get into the details of the laws, it's really about how do you integrate all of those or the many different regulatory requirements you might have, as Spence mentioned, some of which are going to be in conflict. So you got to make real choices, and it's really about risk management and figuring out, all right, well, where am I best positioned? How would I explain to a regulator that, hey, I went this way and chose this approach to balance these things? Corporate compliance 1 and 2 are taught by a deeply experienced compliance professional, giving you that compliance perspective with a heavy emphasis on cybersecurity and privacy. And then we use HIPAA and privacy as our in-depth regulatory regime because it's one of the most extensive, probably maybe the most extensive one in the United States. And so understanding HIPAA really and how to do it in detail really helps you to work with any of the major regulatory regimes that you're dealing with. And then cyber law, again, we're just really fortunate to have a wealth of talented, experienced people. This is a professor at the United States Air Force Academy who was for many years a senior JAG attorney at Cyber Command in the Air Force, and comes to it with both the teaching experience and that in-depth practical experience. And so that goes into areas of criminal law, international law, and the counterterrorism, counterintelligence aspects of cybersecurity, which most cybersecurity, maybe not most, but at the core of cybersecurity really is international relations, because there's a whole industry of threat actors that come out of, in particular, Russia, China, many Eastern European countries. And so understanding from a business perspective what your options are, what your limits are, and where the lines are in terms of dealing with those and when you need to bring in law enforcement, when you need to interact with government is really important. And so that sums it up. And as we mentioned, we're happy to answer any questions. We're also happy to let folks get 30 minutes back in their day and are happy to follow up by email or phone afterwards. But for now, we'll pause. And if you've got questions, throw them in the chat or in the Q&A. And if not, Julie's going to close with some instructions on how to get started if you're interested.
Yeah, I'll give you guys a couple minutes to formulate your questions while I just talk about the application process. So if you are interested in applying, our next session, the summer session, begins on May 3rd. Our application deadline is April 26th, so you still have plenty of time. And we're flexible. We can always extend that deadline if you need some more time. Outlined here is how to start the application. But as I tell everybody, we really like to speak with you individually. One, to make sure that this program is indeed the best fit for you. So I think I can speak for Brian and Spence as well when I say we are more than happy to talk to you. Please reach out to us. We'd love to have that conversation. We can talk about your background, your career goals, and make sure that this program aligns with those goals. So here is my information. You can email me and I can connect you with Spence or Brian. But please, if anybody has any questions, go ahead and chat them now or raise your hand and I can unmute you if you'd like to speak to us directly. Oh, great, we do have one. So I'm gonna read it and I'll post it to Brian and Spence. So are there any coding classes in this program?
So
yeah, go ahead, Spence.
It's a wonderful question. Yeah, the answer is no. And so the reason truthfully, you don't have to know coding at all. Most of the cybersecurity professionals I know have never written a line of code in their life, right? So they write commands. So we learn command line in the various different tools we use. We learn about basic scripting without diving into it, but it's just, unless you're going to go into a very specialized discipline like software assurance, coding is just not a core skill you need to learn to be an effective cybersecurity professional. So, however, what we do learn, you learn how to explore and learn and almost teach yourself key technical concepts. So if coding is something you really wanted to do, you would come out of this course with a really great understanding of back-end systems, how commands work, how files are structured. We will play around, like you'll actually see code, like we'll do some slight modifications of tools by actually going into the code and modifying them, but it's not to the level of pure coding. However, again, if you wanted to learn that, you would be well equipped to go learn coding. I mean, truthfully, learning to be a good coder is a lifelong journey anyway, and you're just not going to pick that up in a two-year program. I mean, you can learn some basics, but you're not going to be an expert. And so, but we don't dive into it deep just because it's not a core skill that benefits cybersecurity unless you're heading the software assurance route. And even then, I oversaw a 20-person software assurance program for the U.S. intelligence community, and I've never written a line of code in my life. So again, that's kind of why we haven't taught coding.
Thank you, Spence. Any other questions? And if not, no worries. Like I said, please reach out to Brian, Spence, or I, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have individually. We can schedule personal Zoom calls or phone calls, whatever works best for you.
Yeah, thanks, Julie, and thanks everybody for joining us. Just to reiterate, please feel free to reach out and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you so much to
Spence.
Spence and Brian. I really appreciate you being here today to speak to our prospective students. It was very informative, and we'll let everybody get on your way. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day.
Take care.